One of my favorite topics is the research process. And this is super important if you're going to do a master's degree or a bachelor degree or even a doctor's degree. Then you need to follow the research process. And another word for research process is scientific method. And it's a circle. So you start by asking a question. Then you go to identifying important factors. Next, you need to formulate a hypothesis. Then you need to collect relevant information. Then you need to test your hypothesis. You go then to working with the hypothesis. Then you're going to reconsider theory. You are going to ask new questions. And then you're back at the start. So this is the scientific method, and it's very important. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 steps. 1, asking questions. 2, identifying important factors. 3, formulating hypothesis. 4, collecting relevant information. 5, testing hypothesis. 6, working with hypothesis. 7, reconsidering theory. And 8, asking new questions. So let's go into each one of these and explain and discuss what they mean. Asking questions, number 1. So what if we did this, or what if this, what if that? We can ask questions, and it can be a broad question or a specific one. I usually like specific questions because a hypothesis is easier to write. But you can ask broad questions also. The question is not a hypothesis. The question comes before the hypothesis. Secondly, you need to identify important factors. Have it been researched before? Will it help research the question you are looking for? Can it be researched? Does it interest you? It's very important to find a topic or asking a question that interests you. And it should be based on previous research and should lead to a new research. Remember the circle? First we were asking the question and then identifying important factors, and at the ever end we are asking new questions. So the factors should be something that should lead to a new research. Okay, we have asked questions, we identified important factors. Now we need to formulate a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a statement. It's like if something, then something. It expresses the relationship between variables. Hypothesis comes from the important factors. The first step was asking a question. The second one was to identify the important factors. The third one is the hypothesis. So the hypothesis comes from the factors. And all hypotheses should be testable. This is really important. If it's not testable, why are you doing the research? How are you going to check if your hypothesis works or not? So if, then, very important, it should be a statement, it should be testable. Next, we need to collect the relevant information. So collect information on empirical data to test the hypothesis. And we want to test, not prove the hypothesis. So let's do the first one first. Collect information or empirical data to test hypothesis. And have a look at this word here, it's or. We can either collect information or collect empirical data. So empirical data, when we talk about this, we talk about doing an experiment. where we get data. When we talk about collect information, we're doing other things. We're doing like interviews or other information. So these two are very important to differentiate. But no matter what type of research we are doing, we still need to collect relevant information. And we are out to test. We want to test the hypothesis. We don't want to prove the hypothesis. We want not to be biased. So we are off to test our hypothesis. And we do this by inferential statistics. So this is very easy. Just collect data and test it. For example, use a t-test to test your hypothesis. Okay, we have asked question, number 1. We have identified important factors, number 2. Formulated the hypothesis, number 3. Collect relevant information, number 4. Then we have test the hypothesis, and now we're going to do number 6, which is working with the hypothesis. And when we are working it, we need to think ahead and plan the next experiment. What is the next thing we're going to do? Of course, we are going to reconsider theory. Theories can be modified. This is why we do experiments, to see if the theory holds hands or if we want to modify them. Next, we want to ask new questions. Maybe a variation of our previously asked hypothesis or previously asked question, or it can be the same question but asked in another way. Okay, name all 8 stages in the research process. So there were 8 stages. Number 1, asking questions. Number 2, identifying important factors. Really important. Number 3, hypothesis, stating hypothesis. Number 4, collecting information. Number 5, testing hypothesis. Really important stage to test the hypothesis. Okay. Number 6, you know this one, it's working with the hypothesis. Number 7, reconsidering theory. And lastly, asking new questions. And then we are off again. So it's a circle, it's never ending, goes around. Okay, I want to top this with another theme, which is called research types. And this is also important because we want to know what type of research we are going to do. Okay, this is a lot to grasp, but we have 2 different types or main categories. We have non-experimental and then we have experimental. In non-experimental we have 4 different. We have descriptive, historical, correlation and qualitative. In experimental we have 2 types. We have true experiment and quasi-experimental. So non-experimental, 2 types, non-experimental, 4 types, experimental, 2 types. After this presentation, you should be able to say what is the difference between descriptive and historical, and descriptive and correlation, and descriptive and qualitative. What is the difference between true experimental and quasi-experimental? What is the difference between correlation and qualitative? These are something you should be able to answer. And when you come up with your research, you should be able to put your research inside one of these baskets. So let's start. by naming all 6 types of research types. Can you remember them? Number 1, descriptive. Number 2, historical. Number 3, correlation. Number 4, qualitative. And then we have 5, which is true experimental, and 6, which is quasi-experimental. So descriptive, historical, correlation, qualitative, true experimental, and quasi-experimental. These are really important to know. So let's start on descriptive. Well, it's descriptive. It describes an existing phenomenon. So existing, this is really important word, existing. Something exists now. We are in the now. And we have no degree of control over factors. So we are describing something, we have no method of altering anything. So look at keywords like describe. We use interviews, we review something, or we write literature. Or we can do a survey. Okay, so descriptive describes something now, interview, literature, survey. Historical. It's relating events in the past with current events. Historical, something in the past with something now. So we have the keyword past, and of course we have no degree of control over factors because the events have already occurred. And we do past descriptive. Some theory in the past compared to a new theory. This is an example of a research. Then we have correlation. It's relationship between variables. We have 2 variables. What is the relationship between them? If we increase salary, can we get more products produced? And we have a current, past, or future. So it's current, past, or future is everything. And we have a low to medium degree of control of factors because we can give more pay to see what happens. So we have some degree of factors. And what we are going to look for in research are the relationship related to, associated with, and predicts. Study that compares variables. Qualitative. Examine human behaviors and context of which they occurs. Current or past time frame. We have low to medium degree of control over factors. Examples are case studies. Case study in a company. Evaluation. Ethnography. Historical research or surveys. Next, we are on the experimental, and we are true experimental. Test and cause effect. We are in the current time frame. We have high control over factors, and we are in function of, cause of, comparison between, or effects of. This is the normal thing we think of when we do research. And then we have quasi-experimental. Test relationship without having full control. It's current or past time frame, moderate to high control over factors, and we have keywords like function of, cause of, comparison between, and effects of. Okay, do you know all these now? Descriptive describes something, historic, something in the past, correlation, something between 2 variables or more, qualitative, true experimental, and quasi-experimental. Okay, this one we did name all 6 types of research. If we close our eyes, start to the left. What was the first one? We need to divide them. Non-experimental and experimental. This was the left one, this was the right one. Non-experimental and experimental. We had 4 on non-experimental. You know them? They are descriptive, this was the first one. And then we have correlation. So correlation. And okay, we have descriptive, we have correlation, we have historical, and the last one, qualitative. Qualitative research. On the other one was the experimental. Experimental and quasi-experimental. Really easy to divide them. So this is a good question. What are the main differences between descriptive and qualitative research? Okay, let's think now. Let's go back. Descriptive. What was descriptive? Descriptive. Describe existing phenomenon. It's now. No degree of factors. Describe, interview, review, literature. And it's a survey. So descriptive, now. We are now. Qualitative, current or past time. So descriptive, describe a phenomenon. What qualitative, examine human behaviors and context of which it occurs. So descriptive describes something, qualitative, humans. Descriptive is now, qualitative is also now or past. Descriptive, we are describing something, we don't have any degree of control. While qualitative, we have low to medium control. Descriptive is describe, interview, review, literature, survey. Qualitative, case study, evaluation, survey. Both are surveys. So the main difference is descriptive describes something, while qualitative examine human behaviors. These are very important to know. Next one, what is correlation research? Okay, if you think back, what is correlation? It's about 2 variables that we want to check. Money and production. Is there any equality between them? What is correlation between them? If we get more money to our employees, will we have more products? What is the difference between correlation research and qualitative research? Correlation, this one, it's variables. Qualitative, it's humans. Okay, let's go back. Correlation, relationship between variables. Current or past or future. Low to medium degree of control of factors. Relationship related to, associated with. Predicts. It's the study that compares variables. While qualitative examines humans' behaviors and context of which it occurs. It doesn't examine variables. Correlation can be in the future. Qualitative cannot be in the future. It's the current or past. So when we do case studies, it's qualitative. Correlation, it's more relations. If we do a survey, it's qualitative. What types of experimental research are there? There are two types: true experimental and quasi-experimental. True and quasi